Hi, I'm David Domke. I'm chair of the Department of Communication at the University of Washington. Every once in a while I get a chance to sit down with one of our alumni, someone who's making a tremendous difference in the world, someone who's we really see as a model for our current students. I have the privilege today to sit down with one of our 2018 Department of Communication Alumni Hall of Fame inductees, Dr. Sheila Dean Brooks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chair.
I wanted just to start with, where did you grow up and how did you get to UW as an undergraduate? You graduated in 1978, I know, so how'd you get here?
I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. I attended the University of Missouri and Columbia College my freshman and sophomore years.
Okay.
So I had this really good, solid background in communications and in particular, broadcast journalism.
Yeah.
And you know, when we're young, we do all these crazy things. Well, that time I did something crazy and decided, oh, I'm moving all the way to the to the West Coast. My senior year of college, can you believe that?
Wow.
And I said, now, if they don't accept all my credits, then I will stay here in Missouri. But you did. You accepted all my credits my senior year. I only had to attend 3 quarters. And that's likely because I came from 2 good, solid schools that had good journalism and communications departments.
Okay. So when you came, why did you come to the UW specifically?
I came to the UW specifically because when I looked into the universities in the Pacific Northwest, this was the best school of communication that I could attend.
Okay. And what drew you generally to communications to begin with, whether it was at University of Missouri or here? What was the set of interests that you had that drew you there?
You know, it's interesting. What really drew me to communications was when I was a very young girl. I think I was about 5 or 6 years old. I grew up with a single divorced mom who had 2 little girls. She was a much older parent. And our pastime, believe it or not, was watching the news. I was always curious about events. I loved to read, write, and be in front of people. And I knew then that I was going to go into some kind of communication field. I wanted to be like that TV anchor or be like that TV reporter or write, because she sat down and actually had us reading newspapers at that age. So I was always drawn to communication. And then when I got into high school, I wrote for the school newspaper like we all do. And then, of course, when I got to college, did the same thing. And when I came to the UW, wrote for the Daily.
Oh, you did, huh?
I did.
What did you cover for the Daily?
Oh, gosh. Why'd you ask me that, Chair? You know that was 40 years ago.
Sure.
I don't remember that, but I do remember I wrote stories for the Daily.
Okay. Now, when you graduated from the UW, one of the things that our students often get a little bit worried about is what's going to happen without the structure of the undergraduate experience. And we talked to them about the ability to kind of make things happen, to believe in themselves, to be proactive, persistent, all of that. So a question I'd like to ask you is was there anything within maybe a year or 2 of graduating, an experience, an opportunity, a set of interactions, whatever, that either you experienced or you made happen yourself that became valuable for kind of the trajectory of your professional work?
You know, when I think about that question, I think about a couple of things. But I think most importantly, during that time, we have to remember this was the 1970s. And as a woman and as a minority, coming out of a university and entering into the profession of communications and journalism, I think what I learned within that first couple of years is how to deal more with adversity, particularly in my newsroom, because either in those times, I was usually the only one, the only black person, the only woman or one of 2 in the newsroom. So you have to learn how to deal with that, not only in writing your stories, but in working for men. And particularly, just like I say, in those times. I think the other thing that was really important for me in those first couple of years is really knowing how to, and this is those days, learning how to operate all the equipment that you had to operate in television and production, becoming a better writer, searching for as many sources as you can when you're preparing to write a story, and making sure that those sources, you know, are accurate, that you're going to provide fair coverage. We can learn all of that in school, but until you get out in the business and you're writing that story and you're reporting and you're working in your community, until you have that experience, that's when you really learn.
Yeah, it's all theoretical to some degree.
That's
then,
my
right?
point. It's all about having that practical experience, and that's why it's so important for young people to get that practical experience, whether it's in an internship, being involved in some of these journalism associations, that they can get fellowships, on-the-job experiences. So important now more than ever it was in the 70s and 80s, because there's so much more news.
Yeah. Well, you're ready to be our department chair to take, because those are the messages. Those are the messages that we're giving to our students. You know, hey, internships, get out there. You know, take risks. Don't worry if you struggle, because that's part of the journey, right?
That's part of the journey, and you have to be able to sacrifice. Everybody wants to start out in a market like Seattle. That might have been fine in the 70s and 80s, and we had an opportunity, but there's so much more news out there. When I was coming up, we had 3 formats: radio, television, newspaper. Now, with the conversion of news and the proliferation of news, cable news, digital, so much more, you don't have you have so many more opportunities, but you must make those opportunities happen for you, and you must sacrifice. You can't start in Seattle. You can't start in New York or Washington, D.C. in a top 10 market. You must be willing to go to Spokane, Washington. You must be willing to go to Pocatello, Idaho.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a little bit about, you've kind of 3 phases that I see to your work, because I know you went back to graduate school as well.
I did
but,
indeed.
But you started your own company, okay? And it's been very successful, right? So what led you to do that, and what would you hope that someone would say about that work and about you, in terms of that you're proud about that whole body of work?
I started my career in television news, blessed to have had that opportunity in Seattle, Washington. After 3 years, had to go to Spokane, Washington to actually be an anchor and be in reporting on the air before I started my trek around the country. The good news about making the transition after 13 years from television news into my own business was twofold. One, I've always wanted to be in my own business because of how I grew up. I grew up with a single divorced mother who was an older parent. We grew up very poor in Kansas City, Missouri. So we always had instilled in us, my sister and I, that we must be better, that we had to have the value of education and the value of religion so that we could move throughout our career and move up. And be courageous and be determined and persevere in our business. So that was instilled in me as a young child. So when I got into my own business, what I knew is I had the practical experience. Nobody could tell me how to write or read or get that story and become the storyteller. But what I didn't have, that it took me some years to realize, is the entrepreneurial experience, even though that's something I always wanted to do. And that was the most valuable time in those early years in my lifetime, because I had to learn about marketing, sales, accounting, hiring the right people. And yes, there have been many successes, but there have been as many, I don't like to say mistakes, challenges.
Yeah, challenges.
9/11, lost 60% of my business overnight, because a lot of our business was with law enforcement agencies, and they brought all that inside, that work inside, production, marketing, communications. 2008 recession, lost 90% of our business overnight, had to change the business model, reinvent myself, reinvent the company that was a full-service production company, 6,000 square foot facility with 14 full-time employees, had to downsize, just as government and major corporations did, and then rebuilt that, re-engineered the business, pivoted, to become a full-service advertising and marketing agency specializing in multicultural advertising. And now we have threefold the revenues than we had in 18 years because I was open to look at what other resources were out there, what other opportunities, like these young people. You have to reinvent yourself. You have to re-engineer your business model in order to grow. I mean, everybody does it, corporate America, government, but they don't teach you that as a business owner. Those are lessons learned, and I was not going to give up.
Yeah, wow, that's well, we're inducting you later today into our Alumni Hall of Fame, and really an honor on our part to do that. One last question for you. So you pursued a master's degree and then a Ph.D. You got your doctorate from Howard, both of those, the MA and the doctorate from Howard. What led you to want to return to get those degrees?
Let me answer the one question I didn't answer before, and that was about the proudest accomplishment that I have. It's that I can create wealth in my community. I can help my staff, professionals, talented staff, grow in their professionalism. Even though they're already communications professionals, they can grow. I help them take care of their families. By investing in them, they can invest in their families. That's very important. And that's the most proudest accomplishment that I have in business. Finally, why did I go back and pursue a master's and a PhD? Well, I really started that master's degree at Seattle University all those years ago. Did everything but a thesis like so many of us do when we're young, because I got the big job in Spokane and went across the mountain. I said, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So I never finished it. When I got to Washington, D.C. 30 years ago, I decided I was on a mission. I was going to finish it. And the reason, and I did, and then the reason I went back for that PhD is back to reinventing myself. I was expanding from a television news career, a production career, and I was going to be moving in advertising and marketing. So I wanted to sit in the classroom with the millennials. I wanted to learn about digital and social media. I wanted to be there so I could take that experience and expertise back to the office, back to the business, and work with those professionals that now work for me, a staff of nearly 15 full-timers.
I love hearing the reinvention of yourself, the very intentionality of how you've learned at these different phases, right? That's a great message. Well, we appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to me.
Absolutely.
All right, and congratulations and thank you for being part of our Alumni Hall of Fame. Okay.
And thank you for the honor. This is such a prestigious honor for me. When we came on campus today and I saw the big W, I said, I'm home. I'm home.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Brooks.
Thank you so much.
I'm David Domke, Chair of the Department of Communication at the University of Washington. Thrilled to have this chance to speak with one of our 2018 Alumni Hall of Fame inductees, Dr. Sheila Dean Brooks. Thank you so much for joining us.